Hi, I'm Lena, and today I've decided to show how I make a vegan cheese from cashew nuts, which comes out quite creamy and nice. But the recipe originated actually from the book by Miyoko Shina, Artisan Vegan Cheese. But I found that a few people have adopted this recipe on the internet. And today I will be mainly relying on the recipe done from the blog Peace, Love, Vegan Food. So let's have a look at the ingredients. So the first ingredient and the main ingredient is 1 cup of raw cashews, 1 cup of water, but I don't use a whole cup of water, so I actually use half a cup. In the recipe it is called for half a cup of vegan yogurt, whether it's soy yogurt or coconut yogurt. I actually make my own yogurt and it's quite potent, so I only need 2 full tablespoons. So that's what I've got here. Also, the recipe is calling for half a cup of coconut oil, and you can use refined coconut oil, which doesn't have much smell, but I find it still has quite a distinctive flavor and smell of a coconut. So if you don't have refined coconut, just go for a virgin or, you know, whatever you got, organic or some kind of coconut oil will do. And for this recipe that I'm going to show, I only use 2.5 tablespoons of oil instead of half a cup. We will also need to use some nutritional yeast, and the recipe calls for 1 teaspoon. I actually put a fair bit more, so a couple of tablespoons is what we're gonna need for this. And a pinch of salt, just any salt you've got, Himalayan or some other salt, just some good quality salt will do. The recipe is actually asking for 1.25 teaspoon, but I normally put half a teaspoon or 3/4 teaspoon. So what we've got here are pre-soaked cashews. So 1 cup of cashews, which I showed you before, have been soaked for 3 hours at the room normal temperature. And as for the equipment, you will need a blender. Some kind of blender, whether it's a bullet or a high-speed blender or just your normal blender. I've got a fairly powerful blender here. It's not a Vitamix, but it's a similar. You will also need a nice good spatula. So I've got a pretty hard one here. I've got something to compare. So this one is very thin and flexible, and I find that I do prefer this spatula, and you will see how I use it later in the recipe. And we will also need some kind of pot. So I just got this thick base small pot that we will use to finish off the cheese. So let's put it all together. So I'll strain the nuts from the water and put them straight into the blender. There goes our water. Like I said, I don't use the full amount. However, depending maybe on the blender, you may find yourself, you may actually need to use. Goes our coconut cream, coconut oil. The promised 2 tablespoons of yeast flakes, nutritional yeast flakes. Next goes our salt. So the recipe actually calls for 1 1/4 teaspoon. I put hardly a teaspoon in, maybe 3/4. And what I do next is actually pre-blend before I add yogurt. So let's do that. So now that we've got cashews creamy and almost completely blended to the texture that you want, and you want it as creamy as you can get it in your blender. And if you don't have a powerful blender, you may find that you need to add more water to make it really nice and creamy. So now I'm gonna add the last ingredient, which is coconut yogurt or a soy yogurt or some kind of yogurt that you might have on hand. and blend again. The reason why I leave the yogurt last is because I don't like to blend it for a long time because it is a living culture. So after I add the yogurt, it's just a minimum blending to incorporate it through the mixture, and that's it. So just a very quick buzz and it's done. So basically that's what we've got, and this is a starting mixture. It's really creamy, it's quite thick. And what we're going to do next is transfer it into a bowl. Any bowl, it could be even a Tupperware container with a lid that has an air opening, or it can be just a bowl like I have here, which I will cover with nut cheese bag, so which will give up opportunity for the air to escape and breathe. And I will leave this to culture for anywhere between 6 to 8 hours in a very warm environment that I live in. But if you find that you've got a room at around 18 degrees or lower, you may need to leave it for a good 10-12 hours to sit on the countertop, not a fridge. Nicely covered so nothing gets in there. And I'll show you what comes out of it. So let's see and wait. Let's wait and see. The very last two ingredients, which are optional, and I'll talk about it towards the end of this video, are arrowroot or tapioca flour and agar-agar powder. And to make a sliceable cheese, you will need these ingredients, but it will no longer be a raw cheese. However, you can not use them and stay at the step one and just enjoy the cheese after step one and not go ahead into step two. This is for step two, for the making of the cheese, and I'll talk about it more. But yes, tapioca flour or arrowroot and agar-agar powder. So what I've done, I've just poured out from the blender the mixture into your preferred bowl or container, and we need to leave it at peace, just to ferment and allow the yogurt bacteria to work through the entire mixture and make it bubbly and fluffy. But you can flavor it at this point or later on. You can add some pepper. I've never done pepper before, so I'm gonna try that and just add a little bit of it, and yeah, we'll see how it tastes. So, and I've got just a normal plain nutmeg bag or cheesecloth if you've got something like that, and I just put it over and just stays on the counter. So we've waited for about 4 to 5 hours, and I think it could have set on the counter for extra couple of hours to make it even fluffier. But we're gonna go ahead because the flavor is really good. I just tried, and it's really cheesy and quite nice and light. One thing I found with the yogurt bacteria, when it's fully activated in the mixture, it makes the mixture really bubbly, really foamy almost, and very light. So what we're going to be doing next is making this, or thickening this mixture, in order to make a sliceable cheese, which will no longer be raw. However, because it tastes really good, you could use this as a just a dip, like a cheesy dip for veggie sticks and things like that, or spreadable, because it will harden once it goes into the fridge, and it's quite nice over the sandwich or something else you might be using it for, and fully raw and with a living bacteria. So you could just leave the second step completely out. But we're gonna go ahead and make the harder cheese. So I've got my pan, and we'll just start off from a very small fire. Put the pan on and empty our mixture And here we're gonna add the 2 tablespoons of arrowroot or tapioca flour. And 1 teaspoon of agar-agar powder. You can use flakes, but from the research I've done, you will need at least double the amount of flakes. So instead of 1 teaspoon, it may need to be 2 teaspoons. So 1 teaspoon. And we're going to be gently just stirring that in. And you can see that at the start, it's just looking like a dough. So just slowly incorporating all powders into the mixture. And it's okay if it's a bit clumpy or at the start anyway. And we're going to wait for the mixture completely to warm through. So mixing it right now, you can just do it more in a relaxed manner. But once it starts to catch to the bottom, which it will in just a few minutes, couple of minutes, we're going to start stirring it quite vigorously. So what I'm gonna do now that we've got everything in there is just slightly increase the flame. Altogether, this may take about 5 to 7 minutes, the entire process, from start to finish. But you can see how now when I slide the mixture with a spatula, it goes straight back to the wall. There is hardly anything catching to the bottom, but it's starting to. So you can start seeing that the clumps are getting bigger. It's good. So as you can see, it's starting to really clump up. And this is the time when you gotta start stirring it vigorously. And this is why my spatula, I like it quite hard, that I can really push down, press down and scrape all of the things from the sides and from the bottom. And can use a bit of force. So that's the technique, I guess. You gotta really stir it and the clumps will disappear very quickly. In fact, you can start seeing them disappearing. And the cheese or the tapioca flour will completely cook through and the mixture will become very easy to handle and empty. You can see that now it's completely different. It's almost shaping up. And this is about the time when it's all done. Like this. Turn the heat off. And what I've got here, I've prepared just a shape, normal plate, and I've just slightly wet the nut milk bag, which I'm gonna use as a liner, and empty the mixture straight into it. So you can see it's quite easy to empty, and it's no longer liquidy. It's quite gooey and with texture. And just use a spatula to spread it because it's quite thick. I did have previous experiences with a lot more soft cheese than this, and it would spread on its own, but then it's not as sliceable. So this one will harden up, dry out in the fridge and become very easy to slice, just like a normal normal cheese you would, you know, to put on the bread or in the salad or with your veggies. So I'm going to leave this to cool completely down, and then what I'm going to do once it's cooled down, I'm going to invert it onto a rack like this. So I'm going to put it upside down onto a rack and put it into the fridge. If you find that your cheese goes through the rack like this, then have something similar to my nut milk bag or a piece of cheesecloth. Go first and then invert the cheese. It will be hard though, so very unlikely that it's going to sink through, but just in case if you have that problem, you could do that, and it definitely works. I've done it with the softer cheese that I did make once. So just like that, air drying in the fridge. It will require about 6 to 10 hours. So the cheesy mixture has completely cooled down and has set fair bit. So what we're going to do now is transfer it onto the rack and rub it with salt and spices. So before I flip it over, I like to give it a sprinkle of salt, so it's also on the bottom of the cheese and also doing its job. Like I said before, salt helps it to dry and obtain hard skin, or a harder skin, I guess, and helps it to dehydrate. So next thing I normally would do, either flip it on my hand and then like this, and then take this off, put it down here if that's what I want to do, or straight onto the rack without it is fine, and then put the cheese down. Then we're gonna do the same on the top with the salt. Give it a rub. From all sides. Like this. And then next you can put your spices or what you've decided on. It could be maybe just the dry herbs, or it could be something else. I'm using smoked paprika. Just a touch of onion powder and garlic, and that's it. So that now that it's all spiced, and it will go straight into the fridge for 8 to 10 hours, after which I will take it out and wrap it into some kind of a paper. So it could be not wax paper, just some kind of paper, and that's how you store it. Don't put it in a plastic or some kind of container or anything like this. Doesn't need to. Just wrapped in the paper towel or paper wrap, and it can last in the fridge for up to 10 days. I haven't tried longer, but that's how long it lasted in our fridge. Enjoy. Hopefully it works for you and turns out well and sliceable, as it for most people it's the most annoying thing if you make it and it's too watery, so you know, but it's still very tasty. So you can, yeah, it's very cheesy and it's quite rich and creamy. So yeah, enjoy.